Hey, everyone, how y'all doing? We're going to read Follow Me to Hell. Continue. Next chapter is the Magna Carta. The Mexican Congress, unimpressed with sudden royalty, refused to draw up a new Mexican constitution with a role for the emperor. Because of this and the rumors of the conspiracy to kill him, dismiss the Congress and create national institution Juana. It's it was directed by to craft much needed economic matters, enact a provisional set of laws for the empire. The issue called the new Constitute Congress, which would be responsible for drafting a new Mexican constitution. As if that was not enough, Interbid had a score of former members of the old Constitute Congress tossed into prison, as the colonists in Texas waiting, wondering if they would be able to stay or be forced to go. In Mexico City, some prominent politicians and military leaders, many of whom had initially supported Occitan I as emperor, turned against him. They included well-known leader Vincent Guerrero, Nicholas Barrow, and Victoria, adding to the difficulties of King Ferdinand of Spain, expressed his intentions to reconquer Mexico. One conquest was that no European nation was willing to recognize the former colony independent, that its emperor was living exclusively while his economic politics were draining resources, did not sit very well either. The leader was unable to pay his army significant portions of his power. Base become uh, dwindle. The days grew darker for the leader when on December 2nd, 1822, the young and ambitious Antonio Lopez Santa publicly supposed him, trying a different tack, invite his new rebel to Mexico City, recognize the danger as such as invitation. Santa Anna kept his distance and called for reinstatement of the old Constitute Congress, which would then have a right to decide the form of government of the new nation. Revel, Garo, and Bravo fled Mexico City and allied themselves with the growing Legion rebels, demanding the reinstatement of disintegrated Congress. Concurrently, given later events, the fate of Texas hanging on Santa Anna's source, the inveterate general led his army towards Mexico City, winning small victories along the way, weakening, gathering, and sent troops to combat the rebels. But most of them melted away when present with Santa Anna's forces. Recognizing the wishes of the country, the leader reopened the Some Constitute Congress that he had closed and presented its ambitions to the members. The former Emperor Constantine I was allowed to go into exile. For a while, things settled down in Mexico City, which was finally good news for Stephen Austin. In the early August 1823, having been away for an annual colony for over 16 months, he returned, realizing once more that the settlers were almost surrounded by Indians who had not grown fond of them. Their impresario wrote on the back of a land document dated August 4th that he would pay for 10 men to act as rangers for the common defense, and that those rangers will be subject to my orders. The entire massive of 177 words through unsigned would come to be considered Magna Carta of the Rangers, writes Mike Cox. In the history of Texas Rangers, while that may be irrigation, it represents the first known use of the word Rangers in any Texas documents. An Inkling of Independence, Chapter 7. Though the word Rangers was new to Texas, it had been used in Europe for centuries to describe Malta like group of men. In America, there had been plenty of famous and more recent usage. A company known as Rogers Rangers had been formed in 1755 by Robert Rangers in the colony of New Hampshire, the latest in the long line of New England Ranger companies dating back to the 1670s. Fighting on behalf of the British, Roger Rangers undertook raids against the French towns and forts. One permanent member was a Connecticut captain, Israel Putnam, whose early ranger service had tended to go overlooked because of the frame he archived in the Revolutionary War, particularly the Battle of the Bunker Hill, as an officer of the Continental Army. At the age of 37, Putnam was one of the oldest men to sign up to serve the private and militia in the French and Indian War. Putnam, not lacking courage or intuitive, have various aspects with Rogers, including saving Rogers' life. It was said that Rogers, always sent by Putnam, led his men to action. Old Put was nothing of silence. In 1758, he was captain of the Mohawk Indians during the military campaign near Crown Point in New York. He was saved by being original burned alive by a rainstorm in the last minute intervention of the French officer. A lesser man decided that was enough service for one war. But the next year, Putnam led a regiment in the attack of Fort Carlin on the shores of Lake Champlain. In the year after that, he was with the British Army when the March of Montreal in 1762. He survived a shipwreck during the British expedition against Cuba that led to the capture of Havana. The usefulness of Roger Rangers during the war prompted the British to form a second company, which was soon followed by more. Eventually, were 14 Ranger companies totaling more than 1,200 men. With Rogers as the overall commander, this included 3 all-Indian units, 2 of the Stockbridge Mohicans, and 1 Mohican and Pequot. When the 7-Year War ended in 1763, the militia returned to their farms and village. When the American Revolution began in 1775, Robert Rangers offered his service to General George Washington. However, Washington turned him down, suspecting he might be a spy, since Roger had been just returned from long staying in England, infatuated by the rejection or being found out, Rogers formed the Queen Rangers and later the King Rangers. Meanwhile, several of his former Rangers served under General Benedict Arnold in the Revolutionary forces around Lake Champlain. The Rangers were reinactivated during the War of 1812. Without Rogers, who had died in London in 1795, but to fight for the British, the Ranger Stephen Austin was calling for reform to take on Indians. For little consideration, giving tribal affection in addition to Kauai, Koala, I can't say it, damn. Nearby tribes include Waco, Tanawa, and Tinawa. Such Indians were viewed as inherent hostile and ready to commit intolerable acts against whites and brown settlers if given the chance. This was, of course, the misguided exception, not to mention that the Indian typically raid and fought only when provoked, for example, by hundreds of Anglo who appeared in their homeland in complete for food and water. A new militia company commanded by Moses Morrison became official on May 5th, 1823. 4 months before, Stephen Austin's message had mentioned Rangers. A few members of Morrison's team were immediately put to work through, as it turned out, not against Indians. The very same day, 5 Mexicans were killed at the suddenly dangerous Skull Creek campsite after their group had paused there while driving south a small herd of horses purchased in Louisiana. That night, 5 men showed up at the campsite, ambushed the 7 Mexicans. 2 of them escaped death, one of them struggling into the nearest settlement to tell the tale. Without waiting for Morrison or the other men, Robert Cundall gathered 6 of the brand new militia and they set off while the trail was still warm. The killer appeared to be leading back towards Louisiana. Pursuers found 3 of the bandits as they crossed the Brazos. No quarter was given. The outlaws were not only killed, but decapitated. Kendall had their heads plunged atop of the post along the road of the vivid illustration of what would happen to others. Well, I'm going to stop there. Hey, thanks for coming, and I'll talk to you guys all later. Bye now.